Today I'd like to go over 5 things that you can do this fall to prepare your fruit trees for winter. The first is mulch your trees. Every year I like to put a fresh layer of mulch around the base of my tree. The grass over the years starts to grow up through that mulch, especially where I try to pull the mulch away from the base of the trunk in order to prevent that mulch from rotting away the bark tissue. The mulch layer is really thin right around the trunk. The grass can get through it pretty quickly. I like to go through and rather than pull weeds or grass, I just put a fresh layer of mulch on top. It'll slowly decompose all that nitrogen and break it down into the soil. But the reason why the mulching needs to be done in the fall is so that any snow or moisture, precipitation that falls in the winter can be slowly absorbed, captured, and retained throughout the summer. Second, I like to wrap my fruit trees. What this does is it prevents the southwest sun from beating down on this dark colored bark, and it reflects it so that it doesn't absorb that solar energy and warm the bark when the ambient temperatures are well below freezing, because during the day that bark tissue will expand and then at night it will contract, and a winter of that expansion and contraction will cause permanent damage on the trunk of the tree, especially on that south or southwest side of the trunk. And once that bark is damaged, it opens up the tree so that it's more susceptible to wood-boring insects and fungi, and it will slowly rot away that heartwood and it will harm your tree. The third thing I like to do to spray when necessary. There are some pests like these blister mites that will migrate out of the leaf and they will overwinter in the buds. We have these little scaled buds at the tip. Those blister mites will overwinter inside those scales, and then as the new leaves emerge in the spring, they will repopulate these leaves, and then they will cause new damage on the next generation of leaves. By interrupting that cycle, preventing the blister mites from migrating out of the leaf into the bud scales, I like to treat the tree and interrupt that cycle. There are a lot of fungi diseases in fruit trees that do a similar thing. They will damage the leaves, and then in the fall, those spores will overwinter on the tree, and then as the new leaves emerge in the spring, they will reinfest the leaves. Okay, and the fourth thing I like to do is make sure that I put my trees to bed with a lot of water. I like to saturate that soil to field capacity, meaning to maximize the amount of water that the soil can hold. Run these drippers as long as I can this fall so that that soil goes into the winter fully saturated, so that the tree is fully hydrated. In some areas in the southwest, it's important to make sure that you continue to water your trees through the winter. Even though they're dormant, it doesn't mean that they don't have needs like nutrients or water. And so it's important that you still make sure that your tree has the nutrients it needs as things decompose, and that it also has the amount of water it needs to get it through the winter so that it can come out of dormancy ready to go first thing in the spring. And the fifth thing I like to do in the fall is some light pruning. The majority of your pruning should be done in the late winter, early spring, but sometimes there's damage. This is from a deer feeding on the tips. They kind of just jerk their head and they cause these branches to break. There's no reason to leave damaged, dead, or diseased branches through the winter. So I just like to inspect my trees, prune out any sort of damage that can be done now, and it'll just save me some time first thing in the spring when I do the majority of my structural pruning on these fruit trees. And there you have it. The 5 things that you can do to prepare your fruit trees for winter are mulching, wrapping, spraying, watering, and pruning. There's no particular order, but if you can do those 5 things in the fall, your fruit trees will be better ready to go into the winter, and you'll have a much better, healthier tree come spring.